You don't need a swamp to breed a swarm of mosquitoes. I mean, you don't need a stagnant pond or like even a forgotten wading pool. All you really need is a tablespoon of water.
Yeah, literally just a tablespoon. It's
Right.
correct.
Just picture the amount of water that fits into a discarded bottle cap sitting on your patio. Or maybe the little puddle that forms in the fold of a plastic tarp covering your grill.
Or even just a tiny dam of leaves in a neglected gutter you haven't cleaned since last fall.
Exactly. That single tablespoon of water is enough for a female mosquito to lay a full batch of eggs and, hatch a biting, buzzing swarm in just a week.
It's a startling reality check. I think we tend to look outward when we get bitten.
Yeah, we immediately blame the neighbors.
Right, or we look at the canyon behind the house or the creek down the street. But the harsh biological truth is it's usually sitting right in our own backyards.
And that is exactly our mission for today's deep dive. We are exploring some honestly eye-opening insights put together by Ian Chi,
The CEO of Simple Pest Management.
Yes, exactly. We're going to uncover the secret mosquito nurseries that are just hiding in plain sight in our yards. And, more importantly, figure out what actually works to stop them.
Because, spoiler alert, a lot of the things we're doing right now are completely useless.
Oh, totally useless. But hey, before we get into the nitty-gritty of hunting down these hidden nurseries, if you enjoy these deep dives and love getting these shortcuts to being well-informed, please hit that follow and like button right now. It really helps us out.
It really does.
Okay, so let's unpack this because I love the framing Ian Chi uses here. We tend to view our yards as these personal, private sanctuaries.
But from a mosquito's perspective, we are basically unwittingly running an all-inclusive luxury resort.
A luxury resort. Like, we are providing the incubators, the shelter, and, well, we're the room service.
Unfortunately, yeah. And to understand why we are such great accidental resort managers, we really have to look at the biology of the bite. We have to look at how incredibly fast these insects multiply. A female mosquito needs a remarkably short window, like just 4 to 7 days, to turn that teaspoon of stagnant water you mentioned into a whole new generation of adults.
Wait, 4 to 7 days? That fast?
Yeah, it's incredibly fast. She lays her eggs right on the water surface, or sometimes just, a fraction of a millimeter above the waterline.
Oh, so when the water rises even a tiny bit.
They hatch, exactly. They hatch, they feed in that tiny aquatic environment, they pupate, and they fly away. In under a week.
Wait, okay, so if I hire someone to fog my yard right before, say, a summer BBQ on a Saturday morning, am I just throwing my money away?
Pretty much, yeah.
Because it feels like I'm just renting relief by the hour. I mean, by Tuesday, aren't they just going to be back?
What's fascinating here is the illusion of control. Fogging the yard is incredibly emotionally satisfying because you see the adults drop. It feels like a real victory.
Right, you see the dead bugs and think, great, problem solved.
But if you ignore the water source, you are essentially fighting a symptom, the flying adults, rather than the disease itself, which is the breeding site.
That makes total sense.
When you fog on Saturday, you kill the adults that are currently flying around. But the next generation, they're already incubating in your gutter, completely protected from that fog.
And then by Tuesday, they hatch, and you're back to square one.
Exactly. Real long-term control has to target water first and adults second.
Okay. That makes so much sense, but it also feels incredibly daunting because, water is everywhere.
It is.
And apparently how that water collects actually dictates the specific type of mosquito you are fighting. The data from Simple Pest Management covers a massive area, and the situation varies wildly, even just within California.
Oh, absolutely.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because it's like dealing with two completely different rival gangs.
That's a great way to put it. Take Sacramento, for example. It's a perfect example of a regional environmental volume issue. They face incredibly heavy West Nile virus pressure.
Okay, so what's the gang in Sacramento?
The dominant species there, Culex tarsalis and Culex pipiens, they lean heavily on the environment around them. They thrive in irrigated landscapes, neglected pools, and massive water corridors.
So we're talking about natural sloughs, those slow-moving, marshy offshoots and the rivers.
Yeah, the Delta, the American River, the Sacramento River itself.
So for people living in places like Elk Grove or Natomas, their problem is just sheer volume coming from these massive agricultural and natural sources. And crucially, these are the dust vampires, right? They bite mostly at sunset.
Exactly. They're opportunistic and have massive landscape-level habitats to draw from. But then you look at San Diego, and the picture shifts entirely.
Right, the daytime ninjas.
Yes. San Diego is battling an invasive species called Aedes aegypti. And this mosquito, well, it changes all the rules.
How so?
It is what we call a container breeder. It doesn't need a massive marsh or an agricultural slough. It actually prefers the small, hidden, artificial water sources right around your home.
Like patio pots. So San Diego has these daytime container ninjas hiding on the patio. And the insight here mentions canyon-adjacent properties like Mission Hills to Scripps Ranch getting hit hardest. Why there?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this highlights the evolutionary history of the Aedes mosquito. Originally, these mosquitoes evolved in dense tropical forests,
Okay.
breeding in tiny tree holes. Because they lived in deep forest shade, they adapted to bite during the day without drying out in the sun.
Oh, wow.
Fast forward to today, and our canyon-adjacent properties in San Diego mimic that ancient environment perfectly. The canyons provide cool, shaded, humid microclimates.
And to them, a patio pot is basically just a modern tree hole.
Exactly.
It's wild that our landscaping is basically tricking their DNA into feeling right at home. And because of that shade, it stretches the breeding season out way past what people expect.
Which is why San Diegans are complaining about getting eaten alive while having lunch in their patio, while Sacramento is dealing with sunset attacks. You literally can't fight them the same way.
Yeah. Right. If these container breeding ninjas are on our patios, we have to know what a container looks like to them. We have to hunt down those hidden nurseries.
So let's do exactly that. The team at Simple Pest Management recommends a 30-minute mosquito audit.
I love this idea. You just set a timer, walk out your back door, and do a slow, clockwise perimeter walk around your house. But what are we actually looking for?
Well, let's start with the architecture of the house itself. The #1 most overlooked breeding site in California is right above your head.
Gutters.
Clogged gutters and downspouts. A 10-foot section of a leaf-packed gutter can produce more mosquitoes than a backyard pond.
That is crazy. More than a pond.
Oh, yeah. It's an elevated, protected, shallow trough of water that gets warmed by the sun. It is a literal incubator. But because it's out of sight from the ground, people never think to check it.
Okay, so gutters are premium real estate. What else on the house?
Corrugated drain pipes. Those black, flexible plastic extensions people attach to their downspouts to move water away from the foundation.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
Water pools inside every single little black ridge. And because the sun never reaches deep inside that pipe, the water never evaporates.
It just sits there, hatching generation after generation.
Exactly. The fix is swapping those out for smooth PVC pipes where water can actually flow clear.
Okay, moving from the architecture to the garden and patio, what's the main culprit there?
Plant saucers under potted plants. In San Diego, this is the #1 AZ's breeding site. People water their plants, the excess drains into the saucer, and just sits there. You have to empty those twice a week, or switch entirely to self-draining pots.
And what about the plants themselves? I read something about bromeliads that kind of broke my heart a little bit.
Yeah, bromeliads and other broadleaf water-holding plants. They're gorgeous, but they hold water in their center rosettes.
Nature's perfect little cups.
To a mosquito, it's a ready-made nursery.
We also have to look at everyday items, right? Tarps seem like a huge issue.
The tarp is a classic example of an accidental nursery. You cover your woodpile or your grill, and the plastic folds create tiny pockets where rainwater sits.
And it warms up in the sun.
A perfect thermal bath for mosquito eggs. If you can't pull a tarp taut, so water runs off, you really need to pull it off entirely.
The rule of thumb I'm seeing here is pretty brutal. If it can hold a tablespoon, it can hatch a brood.
Wheelbarrows, kids' toys, dog bowls, buckets, flip everything over.
And bird baths.
Refresh the water every 2 to 3 days, or add a small recirculating pump, because mosquitoes won't lay eggs in moving water.
What about the lawn itself?
Irrigation overspray is a massive contributor. If you have puddles in your grass or mulch beds that last more than 48 hours after watering, you're overwatering. You either need to fix the physical grade of your yard or dial back your sprinkler timer.
Okay, but I have to push back a little here.
Sure.
What does this all mean for my beautiful landscaping? Am I supposed to rip out my prized bromeliads, tear up my underground drainage pipes, and get rid of my bird bath just to avoid a few bites? It sounds like the solution is to just pave my yard in concrete.
That is a completely understandable fear. But it's not the goal at all. You don't have to destroy your garden. You just have to disrupt the stagnant water.
Okay.
In the entomology world, this is called source reduction, and it remains the single most effective control approach we have.
So how do I keep my bromeliads without hosting a swarm?
You just change your watering habit. When you're out with the hose, actively flush the center of the bromeliads. The heavy stream of water flushes out the old stagnant water and washes away any larvae.
Ah, got it. So you're just constantly resetting that 4 to 7 day evolutionary clock on them.
Exactly. With the bird bath, just tip it over and refill it when you water the lawn.
All right, so doing this audit takes physical work, it takes diligence, and naturally we look for shortcuts. We want an easy button.
Of course we do.
What about all those heavily marketed gadgets at the hardware store that promise an easy, automated fix? Let's run through a gadget scorecard here. Bug zappers, I see them on every patio.
They are a complete and total failure for mosquitoes. They kill thousands of insects a night, but the vast majority are completely harmless, often beneficial moths and beetles.
But wait, I know people who absolutely swear by that satisfying zap. They hear the crackle and feel safe. Why are they so convinced it's working?
This raises an important question about consumer psychology versus biological reality. We love the sound of a bug zapper because it feels like proactive revenge.
Right. Zap. Got one.
You hear the zap, you see the flash, and your brain registers a victory. But biologically, mosquitoes aren't primarily attracted to light in the same way a moth is.
They're tracking carbon dioxide from our breath, right?
Yes, and body heat, and the lactic acid in your sweat. So the zapper is essentially running an electric chair for innocent moths, while the mosquito flies right past the glowing blue light and lands directly on your ankle.
That is tragic. A massacre of innocent moths while the mosquitoes just laugh at us. Okay, what about citronella candles? People buy those by the truckload.
They have a minimal effect. Citronella works by masking that scent profile we just talked about, but it only provides a slight reduction in bites within a foot or two of the candle.
And only if the air is still right.
Exactly. If there is even a slight breeze, the masking scent is blown away instantly, rendering it completely ineffective.
Next on the scorecard, ultrasonic repellers, those plug-in devices or wristbands.
Total scam. There is zero credible scientific evidence that sound repels mosquitoes.
None. How do they even sell them?
They market them under the idea that the sound mimics a predatory bat or a male mosquito. But mosquitoes don't have complex mammal ears to be repelled by high frequencies in the first place. You're plugging in a placebo.
So the hardware store aisle is mostly snake oil. But Ian Shee's guide points out one thing that is genuinely effective. BT dunks, commonly sold as mosquito dunks.
Yes, these are fantastic. You drop them in standing water that you can't empty, like a rain barrel or a deep drain catch basin.
How do they work without poisoning the water?
Well, Baluti stands for Bacillus thuringiensis israelensis. It's a naturally occurring soil bacterium, not a chemical pesticide. The spores produce microscopic crystal toxins.
Okay.
Now, here's why it's so safe. The toxin requires a highly alkaline stomach environment to activate.
Which mosquito larvae have.
Exactly. Mosquito larvae, black flies, fungus gnats, they have highly alkaline stomachs. It destroys their digestive system. But mammals, birds, frogs, fish, we all have acidic stomachs.
Oh, so if your dog drinks from a treated puddle...
It's completely harmlessly digested. It's an incredibly targeted, elegant biological weapon.
Okay, let's walk through a real-world scenario. You've been diligent, you threw away the zapper, you emptied the saucers, you flushed your bromeliads and used a bully dunk. You did the audit perfectly.
Okay.
But you're still getting eaten alive. What happens when the audit just isn't enough?
That is the frustrating reality of property lines. Your yard might be perfect, but you're not in a bubble. If you have a neighbor with a neglected green swimming pool or your property backs up to an open creek, source reduction alone isn't going to close the gap.
Because you're dealing with invading swarms from off your property.
Exactly. You'll also struggle if you live in an area with extremely heavy daytime 80s Egyptic pressure, like we discussed in San Diego. When you're overwhelmed by invaders, that's where professional intervention is necessary.
And this is where Simple Pest Management deploys their TriZone defense system. What I found really compelling here is that it explicitly avoids that blanket fogging we debunked earlier.
Right. It layers treatment across 3 very specific intervention points. Zone 1 is the fence line.
So the perimeter defense.
Yes, designed to knock down adult mosquitoes that are migrating over from your neighbor's untreated yard or the greenbelt before they ever reach your patio.
Then we move to Zone 2, the yard. But they don't treat the whole yard. They specifically target shaded, humid harborage zones, dense shrubs, ivy beds under a deck. Why those spots?
Remember that mosquitoes, especially during the heat of the day, need to avoid desiccation. They don't want to dry out in the sun.
What?
So they actively seek out the underside of broad leaves, the cool dampness under a deck. By targeting those specific resting areas, the harborage zones, you intercept them where they live and sleep.
And finally, Zone 3 is the foundation of the house itself.
which catches the moisture-loving species that hug the architecture of your house, seeking the shade from your eaves and the moisture trapped against the siding.
So what does this all mean? It's not about carpet bombing the yard with chemicals. It's more like setting up a medieval castle defense.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, you've got the outer wall perimeter at the fence line keeping invaders out. You've got the courtyard patrols sweeping the dense shrubs, and you've got the inner keep guard right up against the foundation.
And the reason this methodical castle defense approach is so important is because of what it preserves. When you indiscriminately fog a whole yard, you flatten the beneficial insects. The bees, the butterflies. Exactly. The ladybugs, the predatory wasps that actually help your garden thrive. By treating only the specific harborage zones, the TriZone system minimizes that collateral damage.
And it lasts longer than fogging, too.
Right, much longer. It uses a layered residual treatment. Instead of just a mist that floats away, it leaves a microscopic protective coating on the underside of the leaves and surfaces. When a mosquito lands to rest, it comes into contact with that coating. That's why customers don't have to call back 2 weeks later. The defense actually holds.
It really is a complete paradigm shift from how most of us approach summer pest control. We think it's found in a loud gadget at the hardware store or a panic spray right before a backyard party.
But real mosquito control is about smart water management and strategic layered defense. You have to deny them the water to breed and deny them the shade to rest.
It's a biological chess match.
It really is. You have to play the whole board, understand their habits, and target their life cycle, rather than just swinging wildly at the ones buzzing around your head.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today. We spend so much time building fences, planting hedges, and drawing literal lines in the sand to mark what is ours.
But nature doesn't care about our boundaries.
Exactly. Think about the concept of invisible property lines. Mosquitoes absolutely do not respect your cedar fence. Your yard is not a closed system.
No, it's not.
It is biologically woven into the canyon behind you. It's connected to the agricultural runoff down the street, and it's intimately linked to your neighbor's neglected bird bath. When you manage mosquitoes, you aren't just tending to your lawn, you're interacting with a complex, interconnected neighborhood ecosystem.
We are stewards of our little patch of the ecosystem. How we manage a single tablespoon of water affects everyone around us.
So check your yards, empty those saucers, and stop renting relief by the hour. If you want more excellent tips like this, make sure to follow Simple Pest Management on social media and visit www.simplepest.com to get your property professionally protected by their team. Keep an eye on that bottle cap.